On today's Hashi, I'm discussing the vice presidential debate, what they discussed on housing, job openings, and labor turnover, as well as the ADP employment report, which came out yesterday, as well as a new release on mortgage applications. Today is Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. I am Byron Lazine, and the Hot Sheet starts now. Welcome into the Hot Sheet. Let me know which market you are tuning in live from. I am thrilled to be tuning in live from my Naples, Florida studio out of Las Vegas, which is where I spent the last couple of days. And I will not be returning until we go back for BAM Mania in just 2 weeks from today. The VIP session will kick off on Thursday, October 17th, with general admission and the general event all happening on Friday the 18th. We have a kickoff party, of course, for everybody included on October 17th, that Thursday. BAMmania.com is the place for you to get your ticket. If you're a BAMX member, remember you get an automatic 25% discount. If you need any help with that, Jill@nowbam.com is the email to hit Jill up and get all straightened out. Was at Zillow, so sorry we missed yesterday. A little bit of traveling back here, but was at the Zillow Unlock in Vegas. A lot of conversations happening there, of course, but there will be no conversation like the one that happens at BAM Mania in just a couple of weeks. All right, lots to catch up on here, so we've got to dig in. I was not able to view the presidential debate, but I have seen a whole bunch of clips. And what we do here when we look at this kind of stuff, especially in this time of this season, we look at it from our perspective, from the housing perspective. So BAMX members, for those of you that want just give it to me exactly the way it was on housing. I don't need any of the other stuff. That's why we do these hot sheet show notes. Every clip with Walz, Governor Walz, or Vance, Senator Vance, when they talked about housing, is all set up for you inside of the hot sheet show notes with links to those videos so you can avoid the rest of the debate if that's your style. You do need to know what's going on with housing. I'll break this down for you now. There was actually interesting, and we have an article on nowbam.com, and anybody can grab that. There was actually some substance here to, at least some discussion around housing. Unlike what we saw with the presidential debate, where neither candidate really dug into housing at any, if I remember correctly, Vice President Harris mentioned housing, but there wasn't on either side anybody digging into really, what can be done. Article we have on nowbam.com does a good summary as well, because there was some, there was some actual discussion around housing. And so it wasn't just, mentioning housing in passing. They actually dove in and talked about this growing crisis that we have of affordability. So I'd love to go to the first clip on the first question, and then I'll react to that. So if you go, and this is about, it took them an hour to get here, but this is a little bit over an hour in to the discussion. They have a question first for Governor Walz, and let's go to the question.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
So, no, pause it right there real quick.
First, let me say this.
So I actually think, just before we listen to the governor's response, and you can put me back in the full screen here real quick, Haley, and then we'll go back to the response. I like the question because this question touched on all of the points that have been, run out there by this Harris campaign, which is the $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. We've talked about that. the $10,000 credit, and the building of 3 million new homes by the end of that 4-year term. Okay. And so the question also addressed what a lot of analysts at the end of the question, she said what a lot of analysts' concern is, won't handing out that kind of money just drive prices higher? Isn't that $25,000 just going to get tacked onto the top of the price, maybe even more, right? Because of competition and all that. Also, inside the question, I thought that was a great question for a lot of reasons, but inside the question talks about, hey, this is the highest top contributor to inflation. When we did the hot sheet on Tuesday, we talked about Jerome Powell's comments on that. So everybody recognizes that. Let's go to the governor's response here. And it's it's a decent sized response. So let's check it out. A couple minutes.
This issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that.
All right, pause it right there. And so I think he summed up the plan there at the end, which is the government, their thoughts is government should kickstart it. And with that, it's basically this, money that they borrow, print, hand out, however you want to look at that. A couple of things I do want to, before we go to, then they bounce it over to Senator Vance. A couple of things that were really interesting here in the transcript. Okay. He says local folks, talking about what the work they've done in Minnesota, local folks are doing this, and that he didn't actually identify the plan in Minnesota. I thought that could have been an opportunity for him to outline exactly what he's saying. He said they made sure housing was the biggest investment that we've ever made in housing. I don't even know what that actually means. Making sure housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. I guess somehow it sounds like getting more supply. They cut some of the red tape. So removing regulations, I would imagine, is what he means by that, for builders, which I'm for. Okay. If you're removing red tape for builders. And then he says, this is happening with local folks, local builders. And then he says, look, we can't do it at the federal level. So if we can't do it at the federal level, how are you going to build 3 million homes? I mean, that just stuck out to me so much when he's like, we can't do it at the federal level, yet you're going to promise 3 million new homes. I mean, we know that's not going to happen. And I agree with what he's ultimately saying there, that a lot of this does have to come back locally, because it's the local zoning, the local regulations on builders, the ability to build faster and for less right? That all does have to take place locally. I agree with him there, but it also contradicts the big promise of these 3 million homes. He says local folks make it easier to build those homes, and so then he goes into veterans loan, which already exists. I don't know what that has to do with anything. And so let's go to they flip it over to JD Vance and see where he takes it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices.
Oh boy! All right, get that out of there, Haley, and then we'll go back. So, a question here. Just I'll go to the question, then we'll go. Haley, you can go to the response. I'll just reiterate the question. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign, so talking about the former President Trump campaign here, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and then obviously cutting back on immigration, which is a big part of their plan. What are you going to do where are you going to build all these new homes? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? When you talk about building, that's the other thing. When you talk about building 3 million homes on Harris or doing something like this in the Trump Vance campaign, you're building homes. It's going to still take a long time to build homes, so that there's not going to be immediate relief. I mean, you can just kind of there won't be any immediate relief. Interesting. I'm always for removing regulation, providing tax breaks. Sounds like to builders, right? Seizing federal lands to build homes would certainly bring a big cost down for builders. The land becomes, I guess, essentially free, shall we say? I don't know. Let's see what Vance's response is.
For higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
All right. So they're going to go back to him here in a second, and they're going to ask him about seizing the federal lands. So, and I want to, we'll go back to that in a second. I just want to address that portion of his response to this question first. So, first I'll say I'm not an expert on immigration. I don't expect anybody here. We're all, housing people to be experts on immigration. That to me feels more like a localized problem in, I'm sure, some cities and some parts of the country. I do not believe when we talk about the macro, and this is, I guess, just more from my observations, all the data that we're looking at and pulling here and providing in on this hot sheet and inside of BAMX and all of that. The overwhelming cost of housing, that the unaffordability has really been driven up by inflation, right? That's why we focus on inflation. To me, the immigration is going to be localized to certain areas, and so where maybe that pushes certain rent prices up and then pushes people out of rent. And then, you kind of have maybe a cascading effect in some local markets. But obviously we're in a debate situation. So, they're going to play that card because it's, one of the things that they're campaigning heavily on. So I don't put much credit into that bucket. Now, what he did say was energy, which is an interesting point, because energy does impact a variety of, elements in the economy, right? And so if you are going to bring, energy costs down as much as 50%, which is what the campaign's running on by the end of the first year, that will bring prices and inflation down quite a bit, which would, theoretically bring the cost of, for builders and all, materials. And you did see, you didn't have material issues in, the 4 years that Trump was in office. You didn't have if you compare home affordability now to then, it was night and day. Obviously, 2020, 21, 22 changed housing. The amount of money that we printed in response, that last and final infrastructure bill, all that money really hurt housing affordability more. But, I think, because this is a debate, Vance makes a good point. Like, hey, you've had 4 years to implement it. We haven't heard anything from President Biden or Vice President Harris on fixing housing when it was more, it was even more of like the alarm bells were going off more in 21, 22, 23. This is the after effects of everything that was going on. And there is, interestingly, in this, this presidential season, this election, there is like a track record on housing from the 4 years under President Trump on affordability and health of the market. And then obviously these last almost now 4 years. So the two big things there, again, I think that if you're going to look at immigration as being a problem for housing, I think it's a political talking point. And if there is problems, it's going to be localized to certain communities, just like when we were talking about Governor Walz, when he's talking about the building going on in Minnesota, that's a localized either solution or, program that they have running. And then the energy, I thought, was a good point. But let's go back to they follow up with him here and they say, can you give us some, tell us what's going on with the seizing the federal lands? Like, clarify that. What are you going to do? You going in there with tanks? What's going on here? National
Mayor
parks?
Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah, Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
We're not going to go and pause that. We're not going to go into the Walz response there on the migration thing. Again, I don't see on a macro that pushing prices up. They're obviously going to debate on that because it's a big issue when you look more at the overall landscape of politics. It's interesting. I'd like more on the federal lands that are being unused, that are probably left for open space, or, if they're not a national park, then obviously that, what is the land being used for? I know there's obviously going to be a camp that says, hey, as much land as we can keep, open. But, I don't think packing in cities further is the answer to affordable housing. I don't think driving more of the population into one location. There is a lot of unused land. And I think that's the overall point. I remember sharing that tweet here from Jason Calcanis, who, again, when we shared that tweet, let me, I don't know if I can find it actually. I brought it up because, since we're talking about politics, it might actually be interesting to bring up again now. He's a Silicon Valley investor. He's on the All In podcast. He's been very open about basically being a Democrat for, better part of his life. I mean, for his whole life, really. And here's the tweet here. So, so this is a, a Democrat, liberal, whatever you want to call it, talking about the plan with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, that where they're going to be handing out $25,000 for first-time home buyers. And he was very critical of it. The proposal is dumb, but the reason why I thought that his creative ideas were important to share when I did share it was this one here, like building new cities. Well, how do you just build a new city? Like I think packing current cities is not a good plan. But building new cities, I mean, that seemed like, think about that, building a new city with actual infrastructure that reflects the next 100 years and not 100 years ago, right? I mean, you could really, if you've seen some of the, images from, some of the other countries, I'm blanking on where, but there's like an image of this, the line. Well, let's go to, I think it's called the Line. It's a city in, well, we'll find out here. I'll look it up. Yeah, here's, and then listen, a lot of this stuff would take probably forever to get built. This is the Line, right? So it's just like, I guess you are packing people into a small little line. It'll accommodate 9 million people, footprint of 34 square kilometers. Where is this again? This is, it's out by the Red Sea. So what country would that be? Where is the Line? I don't know. But anyways, this is new city for sure. 9 million people. I mean, that's if you ever get a chance to watch a video on the Line, look it up. It's really interesting. I don't think maybe that would be the angle. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know enough about the new technology, the transportation, but reimagining transportation, unlike traditional cities, is something that you could really see some innovators, coming together and putting a great plan. Like, think like an Elon Musk or something like that. What could he do with a blank slate to create a new city? Saudi Arabia is what Haley says for the Line. Anyways, building new cities, and going back to that Calcanis tweet, I've thought that's a very interesting way to look at it, right? And maybe that's the way JD Vance was looking at it as well. It's like, okay, there's unused land that would be, maybe in the middle of the country, where maybe there's going to be less climate risk, and where you could just build a brand new city that would attract, a lot of people to we, even within our own country, meaning to migrate to that new city and be, something for, shining light for other cities to look at, innovating towards, and then bring ultimate housing costs down. If you had, the Line in Saudi Arabia wants to build 9 million units. If you had 9 million units, that solves some affordability issues in this country quite a bit. That would really bring some, you have that much supply coming in, that would really bring prices down. So interesting stuff there. I believe that's all I want to get. I don't want to get into their back and forth on, yeah, you can, if you're into the migration stuff, we have it in here. So just go on to BAMX and, you can get the back and forth and the video clips all carved out for you. And so, if you're really into that, you can certainly do that. Let's take a look now at job openings. And the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has their August 2024 job opening and labor turnover survey. It shows that job openings remain steady at 8 million, which is way down from the peak. Hires have been unchanged at 5.3. Quits are declining down to 3.1 million. So pretty steady on all of those numbers. The report highlights sector-specific changes, including increased job openings in construction and state government. Of course, got to keep pumping in those government jobs that they've been. I mean, this year, if you took out, we looked at this before, if you took out all of the government jobs, man, job growth would be not that impressive across the country. So total job openings, again, unchanged. The job openings remained at 4.8%, the rate of job openings in August. Job openings increased in construction 138,000. State and local government, excluding education, is plus 78,000. I don't know why they exclude education, because that's government jobs as well. When you're talking about public education, it's taxpayer money. State sector decreases. Job openings decreased in other services, 93,000. So job openings increasing in construction, 138,000. Let's focus in there, because if you are looking for signals for a recession, you will see job loss in construction, not job expansion. So this data point would be an argument against a recession coming. If construction jobs are expanding, think about how many other sectors of the economy construction impacts. If you're reducing construction, not building, whether it's commercial, retail, residential, whatever type of construction, if you're reducing that, there's a whole bunch of supporting trades, materials, other jobs in the community that are created because of construction. So when you reduce, you impact the broader economy, or there's signs that the broader economy is certainly slowing down. When you're expanding on construction, well, gee, that might mean the economy is stronger than some have believed recently. Okay. So that to me is the most interesting point here in the report. Now, there are some revisions for July 2024. So job openings for July were revised up to 7.7 million. Revised hires was revised down by 105,000 to 5.4 million, and revised separations were revised down by 106,000 to 5.3. So on the hires and separations, a little bit worse. Basically, job openings was flat. We also had an ADP report yesterday on national unemployment. It showed 140, and we're going to have another big jobs report on Friday, probably the biggest one of the week, which would give us a bigger picture. But this ADP one yesterday really had a lot of people online on X and other places saying, maybe Powell's going to say higher for longer, go with just a quarter point cut next time, be able to point towards strength in the labor market, because this ADP report showed 143,000 increase in private sector jobs for September 2024. Annual pay rising 4.7% year over year. The employment increasing by 143,000 in September. Picked up on job growth, picking up in most industries after 5 months of slower decline. So now a little bit of a turnaround there on this report. By industry sector, the information sector was the only sector to lose jobs, while manufacturing saw its first increase since April. So manufacturing, another one of those, data points where it's like, oh, okay, maybe the economy's not in decline right now. By establishment size, small establishments saw the biggest losses, with the steepest decline in establishments of 1 to 19 employees. Large establishments saw the biggest gains. So small businesses seeing the steepest declines. It's harder for small businesses. That might be, you could look at that though as another way to look at the economy. I'd say that'd be a negative on the future of the economy. Large establishments have the room, and stock market has recently set some records. So if you're talking about a big, large, publicly traded company, they've got room to work with now again. That rate has come down for them, and so there's opportunities there. Annual pay increasing 4.7% for job stayers in September, marking a decline in growth from the previous month. And here's Neela Richardson, ADP chief economist, says stronger hiring didn't require stronger pay growth last month, right? That's one of those things that Jerome Powell and the Fed look for. Okay, if we're gonna have stronger hiring and it's going to be due to just like rapid increase in salaries, while it sounds great, it's concerning for his mandate, which is obviously to bring inflation down. Typically, Neela goes on to say, workers who change jobs see faster pay growth, but the premium over job stayers shrank to 1.9%. So that wasn't the case there. matching a low we saw in January. Okay, let's switch over to mortgages here finally. And the Mortgage Banker Association latest report just released here this morning shows an decrease here now but expected because of the time of year. These increases that we've seen recently have actually come to, when you look at seasonality, with some surprise, some shock value almost. So 1.3% decrease in mortgage applications for the week ending September 27th, 2004. Refinance activity dropping 3%. But despite these headline numbers, okay, purchase applications rose 1% from the previous week, and purchase applications are now 9% higher than the same point last year. 9% higher than the same point last year on mortgage purchase applications. That's the one we want to focus on. Well, what are the new buyers? Refinance is, fine. It's great for lenders, all that, whatever. But how many new buyers are coming in? Is there demand right now for housing? And there is, and this is the biggest number I've seen in probably 2 or 3 years, 9% higher than the same week 1 year ago. We're starting to see a turn here seasonally when and Laura, you've nailed it. That's a great headline. Hey, there's 9% more buyers right now than the same week a year ago. Biggest increase we've seen in a few years. To get it out to sellers who are like that, hey, get out onto the market now, right? Maybe there's less competition in your market. You know your market better than anybody. But these are headlines to explain to sellers like, this is great momentum on the buy side, and certainly would be one of the reasons why it might make sense in your market to actually be listed actively right now if you're a seller. Okay. So the news here is that home buyers appear to be entering the market. Purchase activity with this increase is substantial. Inventories of both new and existing homes have been increasing over the course, meaning that these buyers also have more homes to look at. And then you've got some improvement on affordability. So there you go. 10-year today coming in at 3.832. So now sitting back up over 3.8. Obviously that has had impacts here on a slowly, but kind of surely increase here on the 30-year fixed, coming in at 6.25 yesterday on the 30-year fixed. Those 6.1s right before Jerome Powell spoke were great, but 6.25, we'll still take it. We don't want to see 6.5. The weekly comes in at 6.08 on the Freddie Mac 30-year fixed weekly. CME Group right now is back to getting closer to a 50-50, 61% on a quarter, 38.5%. That's even after yesterday's ADP report that we covered. There'll be a jobs report tomorrow that comes out. We'll cover that on Monday. Hope everybody had a great week. Make sure you grab your tickets at bammania.com. bammania.com. BAMX members, you have a special discount on those. You can email Jill at nowbam.com to get set up for that. And if you're not a BAMX member, use code HOT to get 10% off your BAMX membership. Next week, we have a major announcement coming with Zudelio that you do not want to miss, BAMX members. Major announcement coming with Zudelio, benefiting all BAMX members in our community. All right, that's it for the hot sheet. I will see you guys on Knowledge Brokers Pod tomorrow. Back here Monday, live at 9 on 9:30 on the East, 6:30 on the West. Until then, toodaloo.